Richard Hammond sat alone in his large office on the top floor of the Hammond Tower. Outside his window, the Boston skyline glittered in the evening light. At 58, Richard had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. His tech company, Hammond Innovations, was worth billions, but all the money in the world couldn't fill the empty space in his heart. 25 years had passed since the accident. 25 years since he lost his wife Elizabeth and their 4-year-old daughter Grace. The pain had dulled over time, but it never truly went away. Richard looked at the photo on his desk. It showed a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes holding a small girl who looked just like her. They were both smiling. He touched the frame gently, then turned back to his computer. "Mr. Hammond?" His assistant Penny knocked on the door. "The meeting with the board is in 5 minutes." "Cancel it," Richard said suddenly. "Tell them something came up." Penny looked surprised but nodded. In 20 years, Richard had never canceled a board meeting. "Are you feeling okay, sir?" she asked. "Just tired, Penny. I need some time to think." After Penny left, Richard grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. His driver waited by the car in the private garage. "Home, Mr. Hammond?" the driver asked. "No, Paul. Just drive around. For a while I need to clear my head." As they drove through the busy streets, Richard watched people hurrying home to their families. He wondered what Elizabeth and Grace would look like now. Elizabeth would be 55. Grace would be 29, maybe with a career and family of her own. "Stop here," Richard said suddenly as they passed a small diner. The sign above the door read, "Betty's Place." Something about the warm yellow light inside made him want to go in. "Wait for me," he told Paul. "I won't be long." The diner was nearly empty. Just an old couple in one booth and a young man with a laptop in another. A bell jingled as Richard entered. He chose a booth in the corner and sat down. The place smelled like coffee and fresh pie. The tables were clean but worn. It was nothing like the 5-star restaurants Richard usually ate at, but it felt comfortable. He took out his phone and checked his emails while he waited. A few minutes passed before he heard a soft voice. "Can I get you something to drink?" Richard looked up to see a young woman standing by his table. She wore a blue uniform with a name tag that read, Lily. She had blonde hair tied back in a ponytail and tired blue eyes. Something about her seemed familiar, but Richard couldn't place it. "Just coffee, please," he said. Lily nodded and went to get his coffee. Richard watched her walk away. There was something about the way she moved, the way she tilted her head that tugged at his memory. When she returned with his coffee, Richard noticed a mark on her right wrist as she set the cup down. A crescent-shaped scar, about 2 inches long. Richard's heart seemed to stop. His hands began to shake. Grace had a scar exactly like that. She had fallen against a metal table when she was 3 years old. The doctor said she would have the scar for life. "Are you okay, sir?" Lily asked, noticing his strange expression. Richard tried to steady his voice. "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." "Would you like to see a menu?" she asked. "Please," Richard said, not because he was hungry, but because he wanted her to stay longer. He needed to look at her more closely. As Lily handed him the menu, Richard studied her face. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheeks. They reminded him so much of Elizabeth. And that scar. "I'll give you a few minutes to decide," Lily said with a small smile. "How long have you worked here?" Richard asked quickly before she could leave. "About 3 years," she answered. "I work here in the evenings and take classes during the day." "What are you studying?" "Nursing," Lily said. "I've always wanted to help people." Elizabeth had been a nurse before they got married. The coincidence made Richard's pulse race faster. "That's admirable," he said. "I'm Richard, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Richard," Lily said. "I'm Lily, but I guess you can see that." She pointed to her name tag with a laugh, her laugh. It sounded just like Grace's laugh. Richard felt dizzy. "Are you sure you're okay?" Lily asked, looking concerned. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Richard assured her. "Just a long day at work." "I know that feeling," Lily said sympathetically. I'll check back in a few minutes for your order. As she walked away, Richard took his phone and discreetly took a photo of her. He knew it was strange behavior, but he had to know if he was imagining things. He opened his wallet and found a small, worn photo he always carried with him. It showed Grace on her 4th birthday smiling at the camera. He compared it to the photo he had just taken of Lily. The resemblance was striking. The same smile, the same eyes, and that scar, it was identical. Richard's mind raced. Could it be possible? Grace's body had never been found after the boating accident. The authorities had searched for weeks before declaring Elizabeth and Grace dead. Richard had never fully accepted it, spending millions on private searches for years afterward. But eventually even he had to face reality, or what he thought was reality. Lily returned to his table. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat?" "Just the coffee is fine," Richard said. "Actually, I'm curious about something, if you don't mind me asking." Lily looked wary but nodded. "That scar on your wrist? How did you get it?" Lily glanced at her wrist, touching the crescent-shaped mark. "I've had it since I was little. Before, I was adopted, actually. My parents said I already had it when they got me." "You were adopted?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "When I was 4, Lily said. I don't remember anything from before that." She shifted uncomfortably. "Why are you asking about my scar?" Richard realized how strange his questions must seem. "I'm sorry. My daughter had a similar scar. You reminded me of her." "Oh." Lily's expression softened. "Is she?" "She died," Richard said, the words still painful after all these years. "At least that's what I was told. She and my wife were in a boating accident 25 years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," Lily said gently. Richard studied her face. If Lily was his Grace, she wouldn't remember him. She had been only 4 years old at the time of the accident. "When were you adopted exactly?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "In October 1999, Lily said. "Why?" "The accident had happened in September 1999. The timing fit perfectly." "Just curious," Richard said. He took a sip of his coffee, his mind working overtime. He needed more information before he could be sure. "This is excellent coffee. Betty makes the best in Boston," Lily said with a smile. "Are you sure I can't get you anything else?" "Actually, I'd love a piece of pie," Richard said, wanting a reason to keep talking to her. "Apple or cherry? Whichever you recommend." "Cherry," Lily said without hesitation, "with ice cream on top." Grace had loved cherry pie with ice cream. Elizabeth would make it for her birthday every year. "Cherry it is," Richard said, his heart pounding. While Lily was getting his pie, Richard texted his driver. "I'll be longer than I thought. You can go home. I'll call a car later." When Lily brought the pie, Richard asked more questions. He learned that she lived in a small apartment with a roommate, that she was struggling to pay for nursing school, that her adoptive parents lived in Connecticut. "You're asking a lot of questions for someone who just came in for coffee," Lily said finally, though her tone was more amused than suspicious. "I'm interested in people's stories," Richard said. "And you seem to have an interesting one." "Not really," Lily shrugged. "Pretty ordinary, actually." If she only knew, Richard thought. As the evening went on, Richard noticed more similarities. The way Lily tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she bit her lip when she was thinking. Small gestures that Elizabeth used to make, that Grace had started to copy. By the time Richard was ready to leave, he was convinced. He needed to know more about Lily Parker. He needed to find out if she could possibly be his daughter. "Thanks for the company," Richard said as he paid his bill. He left a $500 tip on a $20 check. "This is too much," Lily protested when she saw it. "Consider it a contribution to your nursing school," Richard said. "You remind me of someone very special. I hope you don't mind if I come back sometime." "Of course not," Lily said, still staring at the money. "Thank you." As Richard walked out of the diner, he pulled out his phone and called a number he hadn't used in years. Sam? It's Richard Hammond. I need your help with something important. Very important. Can you meet me at my house in an hour? Richard looked back at the diner one more time before getting into the car that had arrived for him. For the first time in 25 years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Richard paced back and forth in his living room, waiting for Sam Willis to arrive. The large house felt empty, as it had for the past 25 years. Every room held memories of Elizabeth and Grace. Sometimes the memories were too much to bear. The doorbell rang, and Richard rushed to answer it. Sam Willis stood on the doorstep, looking concerned. Sam had been Richard's head of security for 30 years. He was the only person who had stayed by Richard's side through everything. This must be important, Sam said as he entered. I haven't heard you sound like that in years. Richard led Sam to his office and closed the door. I think I found Grace, he said, his voice shaking. Sam stared at him. Richard, we've been through this before. This is different, Richard insisted. He showed Sam the photo he had taken of Lily at the diner. Look at her, Sam. Look at her eyes, her smile. And she has the scar, the exact same crescent-shaped scar on her right wrist. Sam took the phone and studied the picture. She does look like Elizabeth, he admitted. But Richard, it's been 25 years. Grace was declared dead. We searched for years. Her name is Lily Parker, Richard continued, ignoring Sam's doubts. She works at a diner called Betty's Place. She was adopted when she was 4 years old in October 1999, just after the accident. And she has no memory of her life before the adoption. Sam handed the phone back to Richard. What do you want me to do? Find out everything you can about her. Her adoption records, her medical history, where she was found, everything. That information might be sealed, Sam warned. I don't care what it costs or what rules we have to bend, Richard said firmly. If there's even a small chance that Lily is Grace, I need to know. Sam nodded. I'll contact Alan Decker. He's the best private investigator I know. Tell him it's urgent, Richard said. And Sam, keep this quiet. I don't want anyone else to know yet. After Sam left, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lily, about the scar on her wrist, about all the small ways she reminded him of Elizabeth and Grace. Could it really be possible? After all these years? The next morning, Richard went back to Betty's Place for breakfast. He chose the same booth as before and waited. His heart sank when a different waitress approached him. Good morning, the waitress said. What can I get? For you? Is Lily working today? Richard asked. She works evenings, the waitress said. She has classes during the day. Richard ordered coffee and toast, disappointed. As he was finishing his meal, an older woman approached his table. You were asking about Lily? She said. Yes, Richard admitted. I met her last night. The woman sat down across from him. I'm Betty. I own this place. Lily said a man left her a $500 tip last night. That was you? Richard nodded. She reminded me of someone. Betty studied his face. Lily's a good kid. Works hard. Struggles to pay for school and rent. That tip meant a lot to her. I'm glad, Richard said. Could you tell me more about her? Betty narrowed her eyes. Why are you so interested in Lily? Richard hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. I think she might be related to my family. My daughter died many years ago, or at least that's what I was told. Lily has the same scar my daughter had. Betty's expression softened. I see. Well, I don't know much about Lily's past. She doesn't talk about it much, just that she was adopted and that her parents are good people. Does she have any other scars or birthmarks? Richard asked, remembering that Grace had small burn marks on her shoulder blades from a kitchen accident. I wouldn't know, Betty said. But she does have nightmares sometimes. She falls asleep in the break room between classes and work, and sometimes she wakes up scared. Says she dreams about water, about drowning. Richard's heart beat faster. The accident had happened on a boat. If Grace had somehow survived, she might have nearly drowned. "Thank you, Betty," Richard said. "I appreciate your help." Betty stood up. "Lily works every evening except Sundays, just so you know." For the next week, Richard returned to the diner every evening. He always sat in Lily's section and always left a generous tip. He learned more about her life, her struggle to pay for nursing school, her tiny apartment shared with a roommate, her love of books and music. Sometimes Richard would catch Lily looking at him curiously, probably wondering why this well-dressed man kept coming to the small diner. But she was always friendly and never asked why he came back night after night. Meanwhile, Sam and Alan Decker were digging into Lily's past. On Friday night, they came to Richard's house with what they had found. "Her full name is Lily Ann Parker," Alan said, opening a folder on Richard's desk. "Born August 15th, 1995, according to her adoption records." "That's Grace's birthday," Richard whispered. Alan nodded. "She was adopted by Frank and Margaret Parker of Hartford, Connecticut, in October 1999. The Parkers couldn't have children of their own. They're middle-class, decent people. Frank works as an accountant, and Margaret is a teacher." "Where did they adopt her from?" Richard asked. "This is where it gets interesting," Alan said. "Lily wasn't adopted through a regular agency. She was a special case. She was found alone on a beach in Maine on September 28, 1999, just 2 days after your boat accident. She had no identification and she couldn't tell the authorities her name or where she came from. She was in shock." Richard's hands began to shake. "That's less than 50 miles from where the accident happened. The currents could have carried her there." "There's more," Sam said. "We got access to her medical records from when she was found." He pulled out a document. The examining doctor noted a crescent-shaped scar on her right wrist and small, circular, burn marks on her shoulder blades. "Grace had those exact marks," Richard said, his voice breaking. "She bumped into Elizabeth while she was cooking. Hot oil splashed on her back. And her blood type is AB negative," Alan added. "Very rare." "That's Grace's blood type," Richard confirmed. Sam placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. "There's one more thing. We found the social worker who handled Lily's case. She retired years ago, but she remembered Lily because the case was unusual. She said when they found Lily, she was clutching a small toy bunny." Richard stood up abruptly and walked to a cabinet in the corner of his office. He unlocked it and pulled out a box. Inside was a small, worn, stuffed bunny. One ear was missing, and the fur was faded. "Binky," Richard said softly. "Grace never went anywhere without Binky. Elizabeth and I bought her a new one before the trip, but she insisted on taking the old one." He looked up at Sam and Alan, tears in his eyes. "It's her, isn't it?" "Lily is Grace." "The evidence is strong," Alan admitted. "But Richard, you need to be careful. Lily has a life, a family. The Parkers raised her for 25 years. "I know," Richard said. "I won't disrupt her life. But I need to tell her the truth. She deserves to know." "What will you do?" Sam asked. Richard looked at the photo of Elizabeth and Grace on his desk. "I'll talk to her tomorrow. I'll tell her who I think she is, and I'll offer to do a DNA test. After that, it's up to her." That night, Richard couldn't sleep again. He kept thinking about all the years he had missed, all the moments of Lily's life he hadn't been part of. Her first day of school, her graduation, her first heartbreak. He had missed it all, but maybe, just maybe, he could be part of her future. The next evening, Richard went to the diner earlier than usual. He brought with him the old stuffed bunny and a photo album. He was nervous, more nervous than he had ever been for any business deal or public speech. When Lily approached his table with her usual friendly smile, Richard took a deep breath. It was time to tell her the truth. Lily approached Richard's table with a coffee pot in hand. "Back again, I see," she said with a smile. "Same as usual?" Richard nodded, his mouth dry. The stuffed bunny and photo album sat in a small bag beside him. He wasn't sure how to begin. "You?" "No," Lily said as she poured his coffee. "My roommate thinks you might be a food critic or something. You come in every night and always sit in my section." Richard smiled nervously. "Not a food critic, just someone who enjoys good coffee and good company." Lily looked at him curiously. "Well, I'm glad you like our coffee." Can I get you anything else? Actually, Richard said, I was wondering if we could talk. When is your break? Lily glanced at her watch. In about 20 minutes. Why? I have something important to tell you, Richard said. Something about your past. Lily's smile faded. My past? What do you mean? Please, Richard said. Just give me a few minutes of your time. It's important. Lily looked unsure but nodded, slowly. Okay, I'll come back when I take my break. But just so you know, this is kind of weird. I know, Richard admitted. And I'm sorry, but you'll understand soon. The 20 minutes felt like hours to Richard. He watched as Lily moved from table to table, taking orders and delivering food. She kept glancing at him, a worried look on her face. Richard knew he was making her uncomfortable, but he had to tell her the truth. Finally, Lily came back to his table and sat down across from him. I have 15 minutes, she said. What's this about my past? Richard took a deep breath. This is going to sound crazy, he began, but I need you to listen until I finish. Lily nodded, her arms crossed over her chest. 25 years ago, Richard said, my wife Elizabeth and our 4-year-old daughter Grace were in a boating accident off the coast of Maine. Their bodies were never found, but they were declared dead after weeks of searching. I'm sorry for your loss, Lily said softly. But what does this have to do with me? Richard reached into the bag and pulled out the photo album. He opened it to a picture of Grace on her 4th birthday. This is my daughter, he said, turning the album so Lily could see. Lily looked at the photo. Her eyes widened slightly. She had a crescent-shaped scar on her right wrist. Richard continued. Just like yours. She got it when she was 3 years old from falling against a metal table. Lily's hand moved unconsciously to her wrist, touching the scar there. She also had small burn marks on her shoulder blades from a kitchen accident, Richard said. And her blood type was AB negative, which is very rare. Lily's face had gone pale. How do you know about the marks on my back? She whispered. And my blood type? I hired someone to look into your background, Richard admitted. I know that sounds terrible, but I had to know. Lily, you were found on a beach in Maine on September 28, 1999, just 2 days after the accident. You were 4 years old and couldn't tell anyone your name or where you came from. That's what my parents told me, Lily said, her voice shaking, that I was found alone on a beach. But they never mentioned a boating accident. They probably didn't know, Richard said gently. The authorities assumed Grace had drowned with her mother. They never connected you to the accident. Lily shook her head. This is crazy. You think I'm your daughter? Your daughter who supposedly died 25 years ago? I know how it sounds, Richard said. But the evidence is strong. The timing, the location where you were found, the scar on your wrist, the marks on your back, your blood type. And there's one more thing. He reached into the bag again and pulled out the worn stuffed bunny. When they found you on the beach, you were clutching a toy bunny. This is Grace's bunny. She called him Binky. Lily stared at the stuffed animal. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, a flash of recognition, but then she shook her head again. This is insane, she said. You can't just come into my life and tell me I'm your long-lost daughter based on some coincidences. I have parents, I have a life. I understand, Richard said. I'm not trying to disrupt your life, but I believe you deserve to know the truth. And there's an easy way to find out for sure. A DNA test. Lily stood up abruptly. I need to get back to work. Please, Richard said. Just think about it. Take my card. He handed her a business card with his name and number. If you decide you want to know the truth, call me. I'll arrange for the test. Lily took the card reluctantly. I need to go. As she walked away, Richard noticed her hands were shaking. He had upset her, which was the last thing he wanted to do. But he couldn't keep the truth from her. She deserved to know who she really was. Richard paid his bill and left the diner. Outside, he called Sam. How did it go? Sam asked. Not well, Richard admitted. She thinks I'm crazy, can't say I blame her. Give her time, Sam advised. It's a lot to take in. Richard spent the next 3 days waiting for Lily to call. He didn't go back to the diner, not wanting to pressure her. He barely slept or ate. All he could think about was Lily and whether she was really his Grace. On the 4th day, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered hopefully. "It's Lily," a quiet voice said. "Lily Parker." Richard's heart raced. "Thank you for calling." "I'm not saying I believe you," Lily said quickly, "but I can't stop thinking about what you told me. And that stuffed bunny. I've had dreams about a bunny like that for as long as I can remember." "What do you want to do?" Richard asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I want to do the DNA test," Lily said. "I need to know." They arranged to meet at a private medical facility the next day. Richard arrived early, too nervous to sit still. When Lily walked in, she looked as if she hadn't slept much either. "Thank you for coming," Richard said. Lily nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Let's just get this over with." The test was simple. A cheek swab for both of them. The doctor, a trusted friend of Richard's, promised to rush the results. "It will take about 48 hours, the doctor explained. Lily stood up to leave as soon as the swabs were taken. "Call me when you have the results," she said to Richard. "Wait," Richard said. "Can we talk? I'd like to know more about your life." Lily hesitated, then checked her watch. "I have class in an hour, but I guess we could get coffee." They walked to a small cafe near the medical facility. Richard ordered 2 coffees, and they sat at a table in the corner. "You said you're studying nursing?" Richard asked. Lily nodded. "3rd year. I've always wanted to be a nurse, to help people. Elizabeth, my wife, was a nurse before we got married," Richard said softly. Lily looked up at him. "Really?" "Yes. She worked in pediatrics. She loved children." For the next half hour, Richard told Lily about Elizabeth, her kindness, her laugh, her love of books and music. Lily listened silently, her coffee growing cold in front of her. "And what about Grace?" Lily asked finally. "What was she like?" Richard smiled. "She was funny. Always laughing. She loved stories and drawing. She was brave, too. Never afraid of anything, not even the big waves at the beach." "I'm afraid of water," Lily said quietly. "I've never learned to swim. I have nightmares about drowning." Richard wanted to reach across the table and take her hand, but he didn't. It was too soon. "Betty mentioned your nightmares," he said instead. "I'm sorry." Lily looked surprised. "You talked to Betty about me?" "I was trying to learn more about you," Richard admitted. "I'm sorry if that feels intrusive." Lily glanced at her watch again. "I need to go to class." She stood up. "Thank you for the coffee." "Lily," Richard said as she turned to leave. "Whatever the test shows, I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace your parents. The Parkers raised you. They're your family." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "I'll wait for your call about the results." As she walked away, Richard noticed she was clutching something in her pocket. It looked like the corner of the stuffed bunny was sticking out. The next 2 days were the longest of Richard's life. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Lily and the DNA test. What if he was wrong? What if the test showed they weren't related? The disappointment would be crushing. But what if he was right? What if Lily really was Grace? How would that change both their lives? Richard sat in his office, staring at his phone, willing it to ring. Sam had come by earlier with more information about the boating accident. They had been looking into it again, trying to understand how. Grace could have survived when Elizabeth didn't. There was a knock at his door and Penny, his assistant, poked her head in. "Dr. Morgan is on line 1, she said. Richard grabbed the phone. "Jim, do you have the results?" "Yes," Dr. Morgan said. "The test confirms it, Richard. You and Lily Parker are related. The probability of paternity is 99.9999%. She's your daughter." Richard's hands began to shake. Even though he had been almost certain, hearing the confirmation made his heart race. "Thank you, Jim. I'll call you later." He hung up and immediately dialed Lily's number. It went to voicemail. "Lily, it's Richard Hammond. The test results are in. Please call me back when you can." Richard paced around his office, too anxious to sit still. After what felt like hours, his phone rang. "Hello?" He answered quickly. "It's Lily. I got your message." Richard took a deep breath. "The results confirm it, Lily. You are my daughter. Your Grace." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Lily? Are you there?" "I'm here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I need time to process this." "Of course," Richard said. "Take all the time you need, but when you're ready, I'd like to talk. There's more to the story that you should know." "More? What do you mean?" "About the accident." "About what really happened? My team has been investigating." Another pause. "Okay," Lily finally said. "I'm not working tonight. Can we meet at the park near the diner? At 7? "I'll be there," Richard promised. Richard arrived at the park early. It was a small green space with a few benches and trees. He sat on a bench and waited, the folder Sam had given him in his hands. At exactly 7, he saw Lily walking toward him. She looked tired, her eyes red as if she had been crying. She sat beside him, leaving space between them. "So it's true," she said. "I'm your daughter." Richard nodded. "Yes. Your Grace Elizabeth Hammond. You were born on August 15, 1995, at Boston Memorial Hospital. Your mother was Elizabeth Ann Hammond. She was 29 when you were born." Lily, or Grace, looked down at her hands. "This doesn't feel real. My whole life I've been Lily Parker. And now you're telling me that's not who I am." "You're still you," Richard said gently. "Your name doesn't change who you are inside." "But it does change everything else," she said. "My past, my family. Everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie." "Not a lie," Richard corrected. "The Parkers didn't know who you really were. They gave you a home, a family, love. That's all. Real." Lily nodded slowly. "You said there was more I should know, about the accident." Richard opened the folder. "My team has been looking into what happened. The official report said it was an accident, that the boat hit rough waters and capsized. But we've found evidence that suggests it wasn't an accident at all." Lily's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "There was a man named Vincent Cole," Richard explained. "He was my business partner when Hammond Innovations was just starting. He was on the boat that day with Elizabeth and you. I was supposed to be there too. But I had a last-minute meeting I couldn't miss." Richard handed Lily a photo of a man with dark hair and a beard. "This is Vincent." Lily stared at the photo. Her hand began to shake. "Do you recognize him?" Richard asked, surprised. "I don't know," Lily said. "But when I look at his face, I feel afraid. I don't know why." "Your subconscious might remember him," Richard said. "Vincent died 5 years ago in a car crash, but before he died, he embezzled millions from the company. We think Elizabeth discovered what he was doing. We found old emails where she mentioned finding discrepancies in the company accounts. You think he caused the accident on purpose?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "To silence my mother?" Richard nodded grimly. "We found evidence that the boat was tampered with, and a witness has come forward, a fisherman who was nearby that day. He saw a man matching Vincent's description leaving the marina in a hurry, alone, just before the boat went out." "But how did I survive?" Lily asked. "If he wanted us both dead, how did I end up on that beach? We think Elizabeth must have managed to get you onto something that floated, maybe a cooler lid or a life preserver. The currents in that area could have carried you to the beach where you were found." Lily was silent for a long time, staring at the photo of Vincent Cole. "I've had the same nightmare for as long as I can remember," she said finally. "I'm in water, cold water, and someone is telling me to hold on. There's a man shouting, and I'm scared, so scared." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "That might be a real memory, not just a dream." Lily looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "So my mother died saving me. She put me on something that would float and stayed behind?" Knowing Elizabeth, yes, Richard said, his own eyes filling with tears. She would have made sure you were safe no matter what. Lily wiped her eyes. All these years I've wondered about my birth parents, why they gave me up, and now to find out my mother died trying to save me. Elizabeth loved you more than anything in the world, Richard said. She would be so proud of the woman you've become. Lily reached into her bag and pulled out the stuffed bunny Richard had given her. I've been having flashes of memories since you showed me this. A room with blue walls, a swing set by the water, a woman singing to me. Your room was blue, Richard confirmed. We had a swing set in the backyard of our beach house, and Elizabeth sang to you every night before bed. I wish I could remember her better, Lily said sadly. I have photos, videos, Richard offered. Whenever you're ready, I'd be happy to share them with you. Lily nodded, then looked at Richard curiously. What was I like? As Grace, I mean. Richard smiled. You were curious about everything, always asking questions. You loved to draw and make up stories. You were kind, even at 4 years old. You once gave your favorite doll to a little girl at the park because she was crying. Lily smiled slightly. That sounds nice. You were the light of our lives, Richard said simply. They sat in silence for a while, watching as the sun began to set. Finally, Lily spoke again. I don't know what happens now, she admitted. I don't know how to be Grace Hammond. I've been Lily Parker my whole life. I have parents in Connecticut who love me. You don't have to be anyone but yourself, Richard assured her. I'm not asking you to give up your life or your family. The Parkers will always be your parents too. They raised you, loved you. I would never try to take that away from you. Then what do you want? Lily asked. Just a chance to know you, Richard said. To be part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with. We've lost 25 years. I'd like the chance to make up for some of that time, if you'll let me. Lily looked down at the stuffed bunny in her hands. I need to tell my parents about this. They deserve to know. Of course, Richard agreed. Would you like me to go with you? Lily shook her head. No. This is something I need to do alone. But maybe after I talk to them we can meet again. Start to get to know each other. I'd like that very much, Richard said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I want you to have this. It belonged to Elizabeth. She would want you to have it. Lily took the box and opened it. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small heart pendant. It was her favorite, Richard explained. She wore it every day. Lily touched the necklace gently. Thank you, she whispered. As they stood to leave, Lily hesitated, then did something that surprised both of them. She stepped forward and gave Richard a quick, awkward hug. I'll call you after I talk to my parents, she promised. Richard watched her walk away, his heart both heavy and light. He had found his daughter after 25 years, but the road ahead would not be easy for either of them. 2 weeks had passed since Lily learned the truth about who she was. 2 weeks of confusion, tears, and difficult conversations. She had gone to Connecticut to tell Frank and Margaret Parker, the only parents she had ever known, about the DNA test. It had been one of the hardest days of her life. She sat in their cozy living room, the same room where she had opened Christmas presents and birthday gifts for 25 years, and told them that she wasn't who they thought she was. She was Grace Hammond, daughter of billionaire Richard Hammond, supposedly dead for 25 years. Frank and Margaret had been shocked, then disbelieving, then hurt. They feared they would lose their daughter, but Lily assured them that would never happen. You are my parents, she had told them firmly. You raised me. You loved me. Nothing will ever change that. Now Lily stood outside Richard's beach house in Maine. It was a beautiful white house with blue shutters right on the water. This was where she had spent the first 4 years of her life, years she could barely remember. Richard had invited her to visit, to see if being in her childhood home might bring back more memories. Lily had been hesitant at first, but curiosity won out. She wanted to know more about her past, about the mother she couldn't remember, about the life she had lost. She knocked on the door, and Richard answered immediately, as if he had been waiting by the window. "Lily," he said with a warm smile. "I'm so glad you came." "Thank you for inviting me," she said politely. Richard led her inside. The house was bright and airy, with large windows facing the ocean. It felt strangely familiar, like a place she had visited in a dream. "Would you like a tour?" Richard asked. Lily nodded. Richard showed her through the house, pointing out rooms and sharing stories. The kitchen where Elizabeth had taught Grace to make cookies, the living room where they had built pillow forts, the back porch where they had watched for shooting stars. Then they came to a closed door at the end of the hall. Richard hesitated. "This was your room," he said softly. "I've kept it the same all these years. But we don't have to go in if you don't want to." Lily took a deep breath. "No, I want to see it." Richard opened the door. Inside was a little girl's room with blue walls, just as Lily had remembered. There was a small bed with a colorful quilt, bookshelves filled with children's books, and toys carefully arranged on shelves. A dollhouse sat in one corner. A mobile with sea creatures hung from the ceiling. Lily stepped into the room slowly. She ran her fingers over the quilt, touched the books on the shelves, looked at the drawings pinned to a corkboard. Drawings signed in a child's messy scrawl. "Grace, you love to draw," Richard said from the doorway. "You would sit at that little table for hours, making pictures for me and your mother." Lily picked up a stuffed dolphin from the bed. As she held it, a memory flashed in her mind. Elizabeth's voice saying, "Look, Grace, a dolphin, just like the ones we saw at the aquarium." "I remember this," Lily whispered. "Mom gave it to me after we went to the aquarium." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, it was your 4th birthday." Lily sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. More memories were coming back now, small. Fragments of a life she had forgotten, playing in the sand outside. Elizabeth reading her a story in this very bed. Richard lifting her onto his shoulders so she could see over a crowd. "I remember bits and pieces," she said. "Like looking through a foggy window. I can see shapes but not details." "That's more than I ever hoped for," Richard said. He stayed in the doorway, giving her space. After a while, they went outside to the beach. A swing set still stood in the yard, old but well-maintained. Lily sat on one of the swings. "You used to love to swing," Richard said. "You would beg me to push you higher and higher." "I still love swings," Lily admitted. "I go to the park sometimes just to swing. It makes me feel free." They walked along the beach as the sun began to set. Richard told her more stories about her early life, about Elizabeth, about the happy times they had shared as a family. "She would be so proud of you," Richard said. "Becoming a nurse, helping others. That was Elizabeth all over." Lily smiled. She wore Elizabeth's necklace around her neck, the heart pendant catching the setting sunlight. "I have something to tell you," she said as they sat on the sand, watching the waves. "I've been thinking a lot about what to do next, about my name, my identity." Richard looked at her expectantly. "I'll always be Lily Parker," she said. "That's who I've been for 25 years. I can't just erase that and become Grace Hammond." "Overnight," Richard nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "But," Lily continued, "I think I can be both. I've decided to legally change my name to Lily Grace Parker Hammond." Richard's eyes widened. "Really?" Lily nodded. "It feels right, to honor both sets of parents, to acknowledge both parts of who I am." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "There's something else," Lily said. "I've applied to transfer to the nursing program at Boston University for next semester. It's a better program, and it would mean I'd be closer to you if that's okay." "More than okay," Richard said. "But what about your apartment, your job at the diner?" "I can't afford Boston University on my own," Lily admitted. "Or an apartment in Boston. I was hoping—" "Say no more," Richard said quickly. "Your education, housing, whatever you need, it's taken care of. But only if you want that." There are no strings attached here, Lily. No expectations. I know, Lily said, and I appreciate that. I'm not looking for a handout, but I am accepting. Help from my father. She smiled as she said the word father for the first time. Richard felt his heart might burst. I've missed so much of your life, he said. Your childhood, your teenage years, I can never get that back. No, Lily agreed. But we have now. And the future. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, they walked back to the house. Richard showed Lily one more room, his office. On the walls were newspaper clippings, maps, notes, 25 years of searching for answers. You never gave up, Lily said, looking at the evidence of Richard's long search. Never, Richard confirmed. How could I? You were my daughter. Lily touched one of the maps, tracing the coastline where she had been found. What happens now? She asked. Whatever you want, Richard said. We take it one day at a time. Get to know each other, build a relationship, no pressure, no rush. I'd like that, Lily said. That night, Lily stayed in the guest room, not yet ready to sleep, in what had been Grace's room. But before she went to bed, she placed the old stuffed bunny on her pillow. It felt right somehow to have Binky with her in this house. As she drifted off to sleep, more memories came to her, gentle ones of a mother's love, a father's laughter, a family together by the sea. For the first time in 25 years, Lily Grace Parker Hammond slept without nightmares of cold water and fear. In his room down the hall, Richard looked at the photo of Elizabeth on his nightstand. We found her, he whispered to the smiling face of his wife. Our Grace is home. Outside, the waves crashed against the shore, the same waves that had once taken so much from them, but had ultimately, miraculously, given something back. The sea had taken their past, but it could not take their future. That belonged to them now, father and daughter, together at last.